Good afternoon. I'm going to start by showing you a video produced by Steve Cutts called Man. And this video is sadly becoming our reality today. A rather dire reality, but I'm going to give you a different one. So I'm going to start with the statement that I believe our planet can be saved. It's a bold statement, I know, but I stand by it, and I'm going to tell you why. We've only got to switch on the television or pick up a newspaper today to see all the challenges that are facing our world. And it's true, we take a look at them, and some of them feel too big to tackle, which is why I love Robert Frost's quote. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less travelled by. Because don't we want to make that difference? And I'm just going to tell you a little bit about my own story. I was working for a very, very prestigious newspaper called the Financial Times in the UK. The hours were really long. I had a boss breathing down my neck. Profit and loss was the order of the day. And then one moment changed my life. Simple moment. I was walking towards my boss's office one day, and as he saw me coming, he took out his calculator. So when I got to his office, I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Profit. What's the profit on our last event?" That's all I'm interested in, just the profit. And that was my moment. That was my trigger or awakening, or however you want to describe it, when I actually asked myself, what am I doing here? Because the years were passing me by, the clock was ticking, and once the years are gone, you can't get them back. So I asked myself a bigger question, a question that I don't think many of us ever really stop to think about too much. What was the purpose of my life? What was the meaning of my life? What did I want it to be? And it led me on to another question, which is also important. Who and what gives us hope? Now, I've done quite a lot of public speaking all over the world, and do you know the question I get most from the audience is actually, how can you still have hope? How can you still have hope for a planet that has got so many problems and is in such a mess? And indeed, I was speaking at a rather prestigious, privileged school the other day in the UK. These children came from very good backgrounds, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to ask them the question for change. So I asked them, I said, how many of you still have hope for our planet? Do you know how many people put up their hands? Just 2. And that was worrying. It was worrying because these children had good lives and good backgrounds that they came from. So then I had to answer their question, and I've got 2 reasons that give me hope. The first is this lady, Dr. Jane Goodall. She's a global icon. Many of you may have heard of her. She's inspired millions of people across the globe. She's a conservationist who cares about this planet. And I've actually seen people cry when they meet her. And years ago, I read Jan Mattel's Life of Pi. Some of you may have read it. There's a lovely line in it that says, those we meet can change us, sometimes so profoundly that we're never the same again. And that's how I would sum up my time with Jane. Because once I met her, I was hooked. There was no going back. And do you know where she interviewed me? Heathrow Airport in London. Because she travels 300 days of a year spreading her message. So that was the only place I could have my interview. And now I've changed. I've been working for her for 12 years, but I'm more mindful about my planet. I get up in the morning, I recycle more. I just turn the taps off when I'm brushing my teeth. I care about my neighbour. I work out more in the local community. Try and have solar panels when I can. These things are really important. And Jane has one simple message, that every one of us can make a difference every day, and no matter how small that difference is. And that is the important bit, because we often think that these things are so big, where do we begin? But we begin with the simple things. And she's taught me about the importance of the next generation. I see a lot of young people in our audience today. I have a son. So it matters to me what kind of planet I'm leaving to my son to inherit. Years ago, about 5 years ago, my mother died, and it was a very, very difficult time for me. So for about 3 weeks, I was lost in my grief. I couldn't pick up the telephone. I didn't want to see anybody. But I got a letter from Jane. She was on tour in the US, and her letter was very simple. It said, you've got to pick yourself up, dust yourself down and carry on with life's journey, because we've got a big mission, we've got work to do, and your mother wouldn't want to see you not do it. And that's exactly what I did, because the one message, the one key message she brings to people all over the world is one of hope. The second reason that gives me hope is the youth that we work with. Their determination, their perseverance against all the odds that we face to follow the road that Robert Frost describes as less travelled by. This was a very, very famous photograph taken back in 1991. It's Dr. Jane in Tanzania on the veranda of her house. And these young people had come for a very simple reason. They were just going to have tea with her. They were talking about all the problems in their local community. And do you know what Jane said? Don't stand there talking to me. Go and do something about it. And that's exactly what they did. And that is how our education program, Roots and Shoots, came about. And it hasn't been without its challenges. We faced lots of obstacles. And I, for one, when I first began working on it in the UK about 10 years ago, I was super excited because I managed to get a meeting with the Minister of the Environment. And everyone was saying, what a coup, the Minister, Tara, of the Environment. So 10 Downing Street, so I got dressed up, tried to look smart, went along. I was full of purpose and passion. And I told him all about our programme. And then do you know what he said to me? Go home. This will never work. Go home. And I said, but why would you say that? He said, because you're doing too many things, people, animals, environment. And I made the mistake of contradicting the minister and said, but we all live on the same planet. We're all interrelated. We have to work together. And I was quickly shown the door. But what I was so disappointed with was this man was the minister and he didn't have the vision. So lesson learnt, don't let anyone put you off, no matter who they happen to be, no matter what positions they happen to be in. Yeah, it's so important. So, Kenya, I'm just going to show you some of the things that our groups have been doing all over the world. Now, thanks to the minister's advice, we're in 100 countries. So we've proved him wrong. Here, these young people are saving elephants. Do you know how serious the elephant trade is now? It's so serious that they're saying that our grandchildren will be looking at elephants in picture books. Can you imagine a world without elephants? I can't. So ivory is an important thing. We've got to stop buying it. In Argentina, butterflies, they play such an important role in our ecosystem. People don't always realise that. These young members, they're only about 4. They're starting to plant flowers that attract butterflies to keep our butterflies growing and part of our planet's ecosystem. In Canada, Indigenous Tribes. This was a medicine circle that was created by some of our members there. This circle, different tribes come together and they celebrate their differences. They don't create war via them. They celebrate their differences and how they can work harmoniously together and with nature as well. And then in the DRC, where political unrest is a huge problem, these members, they're so brave, they're actually flying, making their own peace doves and flying them outside government buildings. And they could get hurt by doing this. This is brave. And then in the United Kingdom, these young members decided, you know what, we'll do away with materials. We're going to make our own clothes from biomaterials. These clothes have actually been made from biomaterials. They've been grown like you would grow plants. It's so successful that the national newspapers have jumped on it now, given them 5 years of funding to continue the project. It's never been done before, not by anybody, not even by scientists. And then Taiwan, where animals are pretty much disregarded, they decided to start an animal parade to raise awareness. And now thousands of people are in this parade. The last one we did, we had 25,000 people taking part to the streets of Taiwan about animals. And it's all organised by youth. And then the UAE, the Middle East, where water is a huge scarcity, they're planting gaff trees. Young people aren't sitting there thinking, oh my God, water, what are we going to do? They're planting gaff trees. And they're also rescuing turtles. A few years ago, turtles would be totally disregarded. Now they're actually rescuing them and building a home from them. So all these amazing acts around the world attracted the attention of a very famous Arctic explorer, Sir Robert Swan. I don't know if many of you heard about Sir Robert Swan. He's the only man to have walked to the North and the South Pole. And he's got one mission, just one simple mission, to save Antarctica. And why does he need to save Antarctica? Because Antarctica is melting. The ice is melting because of global warming. The sea levels are rising. And soon, I know it's hard to believe when we live in a different place, but soon that we may not have an Antarctica and the penguins may not have a home. So Robert has asked for our help. And now he's given us a big mission. We've got to reduce carbon emissions by 326,000 tonnes in the next 7 years. That's all we've got, 7 years to do it. But we've signed up. We're ready to go. And that's one of the missions we're helping him with. So this is an action for each and every one of us. This sort of thing has to become a way of life. It goes beyond charities. It goes beyond governments. It goes beyond companies. It has to be an individual act by each and every one of us. And I have a great deal of hope. I've been working here for 12 years, but I have tremendous hope for our planet. And so has Dr. Jane. And I'm going to share with you her 4 reasons for hope. So, her first reason for hope, the human brain. We're an intelligent species. We've put a man on the moon. We've sent rockets into space. We can do that. We can save our planet. The second reason for hope is the youth of today. I've just touched the surface here I've given you a handful of projects, but there are millions of those projects going on all across the world. The third reason for hope is the human spirit. Some of you may have seen this very, very famous photograph taken by the firemen. They didn't know it was taken, but there they were raising the flag amongst real horror and disaster and tragedy, just showing how the human spirit prevails. And my last reason for hope is the resilience of nature. Have you ever had a dead pot? I've had plenty. You stick it out in the garden, it's a twig, okay, it's dead. You stick it out. You go back 3 weeks later, it's growing again. There's a shoot, there's a flower. Nature can break through brick walls and up through concrete. And Jane actually sees those brick walls as all the things that are affecting our planet. So, that is the message that I'm going to leave you with. And I'm going to leave you with one of my famous, because I love my quotes, which you've probably all realised by now, but George Bernard Shaw, because I believe in this. I believe that life is no brief candle. Trust me, I know it's over before we know it. But it's a great torch, and we're privileged to have got hold of it and to make it burn as brightly as we can before we pass it on to future generations. Thank you.